And welcome into Dental Profits, the webinar series that comes to you live each week just outside of Nashville in our studios, where we talk about the business of your business. It's all about happier clients, better results, making more money, and enjoying the ride. And that is exactly what I want for you, all of those things. Today I want to talk to you about one of the most important conversations that we get asked most often, and that is about this thing called leadership. I just cut a video on this the other day where we talked about 2 or 3 things, but I want to go much more in depth like I can do in this webinar series where I can't do in a short little video. I should tell you, I am your host. My name is Crabtree. My company is called the Crabtree Group. For the last 20 plus years, I've worked closely with dentists and dental teams from Vancouver, British Columbia to Barbados, and from Nassau to the Great Lakes. And the conversations that we have weekly on this webinar series are all about the things that we've learned to help you achieve those things, which again is better results, happier clients, making more money, and enjoying the ride. So the question or the conversation that I get most often hit with is, you know, Sean, I feel very comfortable, very confident in terms of doing what I do in my business, my clinical skills, my tactical skills, my technical skills. I'm totally good with all of that. I feel terrible when it comes to this big thing called leadership. I've never felt like a good leader. I've never felt like I had the ability to lead, and I just don't think I'm good at it. You know what? I'm here to tell you right now, that is total hogwash. Leadership is nothing more than a skill that you can learn just like every other skill that you've learned in your life. Frankly, just like the clinical things that you do on a daily basis or the technical things that you do on a daily basis inside your business. It's a skill and it can be learned, and I want to give you 3 things that we can talk about a little bit in depth that can help you on this journey if you'll focus on implementation of these 3 things. Why is this important, and why should you be listening to this? Because if you are going to be a successful entrepreneur, and if you have a dental business, if you have a service business, if you have some sort of an entrepreneurial business, then being a great leader is the only way that you can get your team to gel and that you can have the best results that you possibly can. Let me give you an example as we walk through these 3 things. Let's say that we've got 2 doctors. We have Dr. Bob and we have Dr. John. Here's a little bit of background on Dr. Bob and Dr. John. Dr. Bob is consistently stressed. Dr. Bob comes in, nothing is the way that he wants it. Sunday nights, he's anxious. He's not looking forward to coming into the office. He's so desperately searching for Thursday afternoon so that he can get away from this nightmare that has become his job. In Dr. Bob's world, nobody on his team is doing the things that they should be doing. None of the things that are laid out in terms of the schedule, the systems, and so forth are the way that they should be. And Dr. Bob is an unhappy person. Now, let's contrast that with Dr. John. Dr. John is a happy man. Dr. John loves Sunday nights because he looks forward to coming in to seeing his team on Monday. He looks forward to being able to play with that group of people in this game called business. And he loves to be able to work with them to be able to take care of the patients at the highest level. What are the differences? Well, let's walk through some of those. I would submit that the difference is Dr. John has a handle on leadership and specifically 3 things, and Dr. Bob has not quite figured this out yet. 3 things that I would submit are the differences if we compare and contrast those 2 are, number 1, Dr. John, who is enjoying things, understands the first cardinal rule. The first cardinal rule is if you own the business, everything is your fault. This was a tough one for me. This is probably a tough one for everybody, but this is the number 1 thing that you have to get your head around if you're going to be a great leader. Dr. John is always looking inward. If somebody on his team is not performing at the level that he thinks they should perform, if there are systems or areas in the business that are not up to the standards that he thinks they should be, he's not pointing the finger at somebody else. He's always looking inward because he constantly operates from this mindset that, hey, as the captain of the ship, everything that goes on is my fault. Dr. Bob, on the other hand, is busy pointing fingers at everybody and everything. This concept that it's his fault is not really something that he's gotten yet. So when the people that on his team that are not performing at the highest level, Dr. Bob, in his mind, is asking himself questions like, why do I have to be in this crappy area of the United States? Why can't I find great people to work for me? See, there's another thing. See that thing right there that she just did? That sucks. That's just another example of the fact that I am in a terrible, terrible part of this community, and all the people that work for me are just incompetent, right? Bob does not operate from this belief that as a captain of the ship, everything is his fault. And that's the number one thing that you got to get under your belt, and I'll tell you why. As the captain, well, first of all, as the captain of the ship, it's just reality, right? You set the expectations. You determine what's allowed. You determine what's okay and what's not okay. So it is your fault, right? This was one of the toughest things in the world for me to grasp as a business owner. But just because it's tough to grasp doesn't make it any less true. Everything that goes on in my business is somehow, some way, my fault. The reason I want to acknowledge that in my own head is because then and only then, if I've accepted the responsibility that is my fault, now it's not about blame or beating myself up, but now I can put all of my energy into what is it that I need to do differently to be able to get this person or this system or this area up to speed. All of my energy is not pointed at whose fault it is. I've already accepted that responsibility. All of my energy is now about making it better. Cardinal rule number one: if you're the captain of the ship, it's always your fault. Number two, you got to put your focus on relationships. Let's go back to Dr. Bob and Dr. John. Remember, Dr. Bob is not very happy in his career. Dr. Bob, his whole mindset is pointing the finger at, number one, he's got the worst economic environment in his particular town than any other congressional district in the state. His people are not capable of doing what they need to do, and frankly, he has just a very low gene pool to choose from in terms of a team. So consequently, his focus is on it's somebody or it's something's fault. It's not his own. And secondly, because of that, he is not clear that his focus needs to be on the relationships around him. Everything that he does is accusational. And even though Dr. Bob doesn't come in and directly accuse people of doing things, because he's not taking the ownership yet, his focus is not even on having a relationship. He looks at the people on his team as the problem. And if they're the problem, he's totally not focused on having relationships at a very high level on his team. And because of that, they don't appreciate him. He doesn't appreciate them. They're not really meshing together. Dr. John, on the other hand, he is loving life, and he looks at his team as somebody that, or as something that he is a part of. He is one piece on that team, and he looks at everybody else on his team as part of his team. His focus, number one, he realizes, like we said a moment ago, that anything that's not working is his fault. Number two, he understands that for people to perform at the highest level, they can't just agree complicitly to do things, right? They have to buy in. They have to buy into Dr. John. They have to buy into the overall vision. They have to buy into the relationships that we have on this team. And so Dr. John is constantly focused on making these relationships on his team at the highest level that they possibly can be. the relationships that he has personally with the people on the team, the relationships that they have with each other, and how they all interact on a regular basis. So when there's a challenge or a concern, he's not automatically coming from a place of accusation in his own mind. He understands it's his fault. And because he's freed himself from that, when there's a challenge, he's not pointing the finger at the other person. His focus can be on that person as an individual and how they relate to the team and overall his relationships. Now think about that for just a second. When there's a concern in Dr. Bob's office, who's very stressed, when there's a concern, first of all, Dr. Bob, when he comes to the table to talk about that concern, he, for the life of him, cannot mask this accusation. So when he's talking to Julie, because the schedule that she's responsible for is not where it needs to be, however he brings that up and whatever comes out of his mouth comes across as an accusation to Julie. The focus is not on the relationship. The focus is on the tactical schedule conversation, right? Julie feels attacked. Julie doesn't feel part of a relationship that she has with Dr. Bob. She feels that there is constant sort of uncomfortableness between the two. She's not enjoying life. And frankly, when Dr. Bob is not there or when he's in the back and he's not around her, she feels much more comfortable when he's not there. Dr. John, on the other hand, when there's a challenge with the schedule, Dr. John is focused on his relationship with Cindy at the front desk. So when the schedule's not where it needs to be and he goes to Cindy, it doesn't at all come across as an accusation. He's taking responsibility in his own head. His focus is on his relationship with Cindy. And so whatever comes out of his mouth, Cindy is anxious to partner with him because she doesn't feel accused in terms of what's going on with the schedule. She understands that, hey, we together, us, have a challenge, and I want to do the best and be the best that I can be when it comes to the schedule. So it's not about right or wrong. She doesn't feel attacked. She wants to partner with Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob is coming across this. He has total faith in Cindy. It's just that we have a challenge with this particular area. Both of them are coming at it from a team standpoint because their relationship is very solid. So number one, if you're the captain of the ship, every challenge that you have is somehow, some way your fault. Number two, your focus has got to be on the relationships that you have with the people around you. And number three, here's the big one. You have to communicate about everything. And I don't mean communication in terms of complaining. Obviously, you can't complain to the people on your team about other members of your team. I mean, that just goes without saying, right? But I'm talking about even at a deeper level. If you're walking around complaining in your own mind instead of communicating openly about everything, then it can't be solved, right? Number three, communicating openly actually happens sort of by attrition if you think about it, because number one is you're taking ownership. You realize it's some way, whatever the challenge is, it's your fault, right? Number two, your focus is on your relationships. Well, if you're taking responsibility, no matter what the situation is as the leader of the ship, and if your focus is on your relationships on your team being at the highest level they possibly can be, then what in the world would possibly prevent you from communicating about everything openly? Right? Now, I know what you're hearing. Sean, I'm not really comfortable. Or I know what you're thinking, not hearing. Sean, I'm not really comfortable to communicate openly. I don't know how to communicate. But you know what? It starts with those first two things. Take responsibility because you're the captain of the ship. You determine what is okay, what's allowed, what's not, and focus on your relationships. With those two things, there shouldn't be anything that's holding you back from communicating. Most people are afraid to communicate stuff because they don't want it to come across like they're accusing somebody of doing something wrong. Listen, if those first two things are in place, if your focus is on your relationship and you're taking responsibility and you have a consistent culture where communication is all the time happening on a regular basis, then why in the world would somebody think that you're attacking them, right? Now, if you never communicate, and let's go to Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob, remember, is not having a good time. Dr. Bob is not taking any responsibility. His focus is not on relationships because, after all, he's pointing the finger at the people around him. If he just had a great team, or if he just were in a better area, Or if he just were in the 6th congressional district, then man, what a wonderful world this would be. But because he has none of those things, he's pissed off at the world. He's pissed off at his team. His focus is not on the relationships. And so Dr. Bob, his only form of communication is in his own head. And every day when he drives home, he's asking himself questions, complaining to himself. Why is it that I have this practice and these patients suck and these team, they're terrible and people are poor in this congressional district, and why? The only time Dr. Bob finally does communicate is when he's talked to himself enough that he's just ready to explode, and he ends up exploding on the people on his team, who in turn feel accused, because the only communication they ever have with Dr. Bob is when he is super pissed and things are not working well and he's upset, right? And everything is about right and wrong and blame and finger pointing. Dr. John, on the other hand, remember, Dr. John understands, I'm the captain of the ship. Everything that goes on is, if it's not working at the best that it can be, is somehow, some way my fault. He is looking inward at all times. His focus is on his relationships. Therefore, he communicates about everything. Dr. John is looking for things on a daily basis to acknowledge things that are going well and the people that are thinking differently to make those things happen. And when things are not going well, Dr. John comes at it from the standpoint of, look, in his own mind, you know what? I know somehow this is my fault somehow, and I want to bring this to you so that you can help me and we can help make this better. So when Dr. John has a challenge and he brings it to Jody on his team, because the hygiene department is not where it needs to be, we've got cancels and no-shows, Jody doesn't at all look at it like Dr. John is accusing her of anything. She looks at it like, oh my gosh, Dr. John's right, we have a challenge here. And gosh, he's pointing the finger at himself. You know what? Maybe I have some responsibility in this too. And so right and wrong don't exist. If anything, everybody's okay having, ownership when there's a problem. Everybody's okay saying, hey, you know what? Maybe this is my fault. What a totally different culture Dr. John and Dr. Bob have. I want you to have a Dr. John culture, right? So these are the 3 things that you need to focus on. Number 1, if you're the captain of the ship, everything that's not working is your fault. Listen, you got to swallow some pride. I have a challenge with this. If you talk to anybody who's been an entrepreneur for any length of time, they'll tell you that things changed when they began to look inward, right? Things change when they realize, look, it's all me. I'm the constant. I own the place. The people will change, the circumstances will change, the economy will change, the situations will change. But you know what? Me, I'm the captain of the ship. I'm the constant. It's all my fault. Mama ain't coming, right? It's all me. And I can tell you personally that when you take ownership at that level, then you can get beyond, right, pointing fingers at everybody else and everything else, and that's when things move very, very quickly. Number 2, put your focus on the relationships. At the end of the day, you spend more time with those people that you see at your office than you do your own family, if you think about it throughout the course of a year. Put your focus on making those relationships the very best they can be. The best with each other in terms of the people on your team, the best with you and them and all of you together. You only got one shot at this life, right? You're spending the majority of your time with those people. Put your focus on maximizing those relationships. You guys are all in the foxhole together. If one of you has a challenge, we have a challenge. So number 2, put your focus on those relationships. And number 3, communicate about everything. Communicate about everything good and everything that's not working. Eliminate right and wrong in terms of your mindset, but look at it in terms of it's either working, in which case there's somebody or something or both that I need to really acknowledge, and we need to communicate about that in a good way. or there's something that's not working, in which case we just have a challenge and we just overcome it. It's not about blame and it's not about accusation, but it is about communicating, and it's totally not about complaining. Complaining to other people obviously doesn't work, but even complaining to yourself. At the end of the day, you've only got one shot at this life. There are only so many birthdays that you get to enjoy on this earth. Make it the very best that you can make it. I'll tell you a quick story. I've never told this on camera. And I'm thinking about this because I just had a birthday. The big 5-0. And I know what you're thinking, Sean. Good grief, you don't look a day over 30. I don't disagree with you one bit, but it is true. I just hit the big 5-0. Half of a century old. I know it's hard to believe, but I have to tell you, I feel it. And that just happened last week. So we've just come off the holidays. We've got a brand new year, and this conversation about your team and birthdays and all of that, like it really hits me hard. Several years ago, I'm in Tennessee, as you guys know, and we do some hunting around here. We turkey hunt. We do all sorts of things. I particularly am a turkey hunter. Several years ago, I was hunting on some property, and I'd given somebody permission to also hunt on my property. He didn't know I was there. I didn't know he was there. This guy broke all the rules. Long story short, I was sitting on a limestone rock, and there were turkey all around me in our farm here, and they were just making all sorts of noise. And all of a sudden, I felt something like water had been slung on me, and then I heard bam. I thought, what in the world is going on here? I rubbed my face, and it was just totally blood. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I've been shot. The first thing that came to my mind is, okay, is my nose still here? Is my eye and my ear in place? Is my eyelid there? Because if I get up from this spot in the woods and something is off, like I will never find it. Well, everything seemed to be sort of in order. I couldn't see very well. I couldn't hear. And I had a big ringing in my ear. Then I got pissed. Turned around, and there was a person who had just shot me with a 12 gauge right in the head. He took one look at me, dropped his gun, screamed, and took off running. And I thought, holy mackerel, I must be pretty bad here. What am I going to do? I'm in the middle of the woods. Obviously, I must look pretty bad because it scared this guy away. Geez. Well, long story short, I got a helicopter ride to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Spent the night in trauma, and I can tell you, on that helicopter ride, they cut all my clothes off. I had this massive hematoma on my neck, and it was, I found out later, less than a millimeter from my carotid artery, so that's how close I came. I never thought I was going to die, but I can tell you the things that were going through my mind are the relationships that I have played with for the last many years on a daily basis. Of course, it was my family. It was those that are closest to me, but it was also the relationships of the people that I deal with on a daily basis in this journey called life and business and entrepreneurship. It was face after face after face after face in my mind. I couldn't talk, I couldn't hear, and I couldn't see. But this was playing in my mind over and over and over again. And I thought, if I were to check out today, there's lots of people that would never really know what they mean to me on a daily basis and how much I appreciate the things that they do with me for our clientele. And I made a commitment that I'm going to every day look for some way, somehow, to acknowledge the people around me who are in this foxhole with me together on a daily basis. And I've done that ever since then. Long story short, I landed on the roof of the Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And just like you see on TV, right, these guys came out with, rolling gurneys, and they had Budweiser do-rags on their head. And All I remember is the surgeon saying, "Mr. Crabtree, you got a major hematoma on your neck. We're going to go in and operate, and we'll let you know how it goes once it's over." And I remember trying to talk to say, "Where are you going to cut me?" Right? He said, "Count backwards from 10." And in my mind, I went, 10. That's it. I woke up in the trauma center, which is just an absolute horrible, horrible experience. But I got out of that the next day. I had, after several surgeries on my eye, and you guys are going, okay, you certainly are uglier than you were. But I had several surgeries on my eye, had several surgeries here. They cut me from my neck, from my ear all the way down. If you look close, you can see that. I'm thankful to be alive, but the reason I tell you that story is because you only get one shot at this life. And at the end of the day, if somebody ever told me that I would have gotten a shot in the head, I'd have said, "You're crazy." But now I'm thinking, you know what? Gosh, cancer might be in my future. You just never know. You just never know. Focus on the relationships that you have. Realize, number one, focus on the relationships that you have. Number two, number one, realize that everything that goes on, you're the captain of the ship. It's somehow, some way, your fault. You only got one shot at this life. Number three, communicate about everything with the people that you spend more time with than you do your own families. I appreciate you spending time with me. I hope you found this useful. Go to our website, thecrabtreegroup.com. Click on the YouTube button. It'll take you to YouTube. Hit subscribe. Every video that we create on a webinar series or everything else will go directly to your inbox. Remember those three things. If you want leadership to really be implemented at the highest level, which is absolutely dependent upon your success, then number one, everything is your fault. Number two, focus on your relationships. Number three, communicate about everything. Those three things implemented will allow you to have your team follow you. I think it was Roosevelt who said, push a string, it goes nowhere. Pull a string, and it goes every step that you go. I want this to be the best year ever for you. You can be a great leader. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week.